We so appreciate you taking time to join us this evening. I know that you are so busy with so much going during this month of May, and yet we are focused on preparing and looking ahead to the school year 21-22. We're also working right now to wrap up this finish to this 2021 school year. I have with me Don Linden, Assistant Superintendent this evening, and Mr. Andrew Cluley, who of course does communications. We've shared a few photos from some of our schools this evening. I think what we'll do is review the plan for 21-22. I'll move briskly through that because you've received that in other communications. Then Ms. Dawn Linden will share a little bit about teaching and learning as we look ahead in 21-22, thinking about how to help our students make those learning leaps as we come out of this COVID time. And then we'll move right into your questions. Of course, the most important part of our being together this evening. You can see just some shots here, photos of our classrooms, both our roomies who are choosing to be with us in person in our schools this spring, as well as great photos of our Zoomies and their home work as well. AAPS ReckonEd has launched over 150 outdoor soccer teams, and it's so great to see our students out playing and enjoying. We held dedicated sessions to share more about our summer learning, but in case you missed those, we've included that information in this slide deck. It is also right on the front page, a link at a2schools.org. Our enrollment for summer learning continues. We do have about 2,700 students, give or take, already enrolled, and we're still enrolling as we go. Also, summer enrichment. All of our summer camps start on the Monday after school is out and continue all the way through the summer through August 27th. We were delighted with the opening up of the vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds, and I'm just so thrilled that right now, going on for just under another hour, is our community COVID vaccine clinic. They shared with me earlier today 100 and some second shot appointments for our 16 and above. Mostly those are students, and then additional 300 and some inoculations there today for 12 to 15-year-olds. Last time I heard from them, they were fully booked. I think maybe only just a couple of appointments open. So we're delighted that vaccines continue. Just thrilled to see yesterday that Washtenaw County is the second, I'm not sure, Don and Andrew, if you saw this, Washtenaw County, the second highest in vaccine rate among 12 to 15-year-olds. And we were right around 25% of our 12 to 15-year-olds in only 2 weeks. So that gives us great enthusiasm for a full return at middle and high school. We also are continuing on Saturdays. The testing for those who are not yet vaccinated, the testing clinics continue. It is a saliva-based test drive-through, very easy, and we'll continue those on this Saturday and then also on June 5th. This evening session is really about preparing for our back to school. August 30th of 2021, that start just ahead of Labor Day causes our year to really fit with bookends finishing up around June 10th. So it really lays the year out nicely, will allow us to get our students back in for 4 days that first week, get into the rhythm of a full back to school, and then enjoy a 4-day Labor Day weekend. This fall will really be about re-engagement, a full re-engagement restoration, and renewal. We know that this has been a tremendously challenging time for our students, for our parents and families. And this will be a time of really restoring our learning environments in the schools and restoring our relationships face-to-face, restoring our AAPS school community all together. We are 5 full days back to school. I want to point out there is no hybrid instruction in our plan. We are asking parents and students to choose the virtual pathway or the in-school face-to-face. Will not be mixing those in this school year. Just to make sure we're all clear, this is a full return to operation at all 30 of our physical campuses. It includes our academic, performing, visual arts, and science, enrichment, athletic and extracurricular, our international baccalaureate, STEAM, Project Lead the Way, 7 world languages, environmental education, Rec and Ed, highlights continue, science Olympiad, robotics, and orchestra night. On the list goes. We are excited to scale up fully in our Ann Arbor Public Schools. We are going to bring some innovations with us. We can talk more about those a little bit later. Let's look at the programs. Back to school at elementary. This is in grades kinder through 5th. Parents will have the choice of 3 opportunities. We feel like most of our families are looking forward to that return to an in-person, in-school, 5 days a week school experience that will be offered across all of our elementary and K-8 campuses. Our 2 virtual opportunities will still be available. The second one is our A2 live online school. This is K-5 instruction in a virtual class community, students together with their teacher in live instruction. That is 5 days a week. And then our third option that we have had in the past, will continue, is our A2 virtual. Folks refer to it as A2VE for short, and that is the asynchronous. Students are working more independently there with the support of a teacher weekly. All 3 of these programs will feature our quality Ann Arbor Public Schools teachers and support staff and leaders. As we move to middle and high school, again, that in-person, in-school experience, we believe that will be the choice of most families, especially with the vaccines being in place at 12 years and above. And yet we will have both the A2 virtual middle school and the A2 virtual high school. So those opportunities will continue. We will also, as we have in years past, offer the supplemental or additional classes for those that choose A2 virtual for a single class or 2 classes as they go. We have shared our information about our preschool. All of our preschool programs will be fully open. That's Westerman Preschool and all of our satellite classrooms around the district. It includes many programs, First Steps, Great Start Readiness, Head Start, blended classrooms, Young Fives in every elementary school. The one thing you should know about preschool is there will not be a virtual preschool this fall. We know that is not the best practice for our youngest students, so we will be doing all of that face-to-face. We have shared the information over this past week regarding our school-age child care program. We do hear and understand the concerns in the community for continuing this long valued program. in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. Now, I want to be clear, the program will be reorganized and be reopened, but we do feel it's important to point out that for this school year, our elementary students will not be fully vaccinated when they return to school unless something changes. So we are anticipating COVID requirements in those elementary classrooms and programs. So we will, over this summer, continue to monitor the COVID requirements for that COVID healthy and safe school environment. We will continue to recruit our child care workforce. We will determine the feasibility and the timing of any reopening of our small child care programs, probably not the large group programs from before. And we will rebuild on the strength of this valued program. And yet we are sharing, because we know how important this is for our families. We're sharing now that our families should plan for a non-AAPS option for this coming fall. We will continue to engage with our community, both in these sessions and then also in about 3 opportunities to hear your input and feedback. The first one that's coming out here in the next few days is a thought exchange activity. Secondly, we'll ask you to go ahead when you're ready and reserve your seat in the Ann Arbor Public Schools by registering in InfoSnap. And then coming behind those will also be the regular spring Ann Arbor Public Schools survey. We do that every spring. We have for years, and we'll want to hear from you, your thoughts on that. The thought exchange questions are really 3 parts, very straightforward. The first one is really about the priorities that you're considering for your child, for your school, for our community. Secondly, what innovations from this past year would you like to make sure that we bring along with us back into the in-school environment? And then thirdly, we always just want that open-ended opportunity. What other thoughts do you have in mind in terms of things you'd like us to consider as we're preparing for this next school year? Just real quickly, this is what your InfoSnap page will look like. Really 3 opportunities. We reviewed them earlier, all 3 of them at elementary with our quality Ann Arbor Public Schools teachers. And then at secondary, your choice form, when you go into InfoSnap, will look like this. The in-school, in-person school, and then those who would like the in-person, but also some A2 virtual. And then thirdly, those students who are choosing with their families for the full virtual option at secondary. So that really is the overview of what we're looking forward to as we look ahead to this time of restoration and renewal and re-engaging in our full in-school, in-person, 5 days a week of instruction. Ms. Linden, one of the questions I hear every day from parents who email or call or engage in these sessions, what will teaching and learning look like? Obviously, our students have been through 15 months of a very different kind of delivery of instruction. What are we anticipating as we look ahead to this next school year?
It is an excellent question, and I have to say an exciting one to respond to, because, you know, on the teaching and learning side, while I think many folks view what has happened, including the teaching and learning team, as forms of areas where we've lost or we've changed trajectory in really unpredictable ways, there is also incredible learning that has taken place over this past year, and not just academic learning, but learning about ways in which we operate. And so here's our thinking about the fall, and our teams have been busy working on this for some time. Our plans are to adjust we know that we've got at least 3 years of focus on our planning and our instructional work, so that we can make sure we harness all of the great learning that did happen this year and maximize all of the tools and resources that were added to our repertoire and that are now part of the ways that students operate and engage in the learning process together. And so we'll be adjusting our scope and sequence over the next few years to make sure that we hit the right foundational foci, that we have the right concepts focused on, and that students are well prepared for their futures. But we're also looking at ways we can continue to increase connections and social emotional relationships with our students. There were many ways that students felt more deeply connected over the past year because of the ways they could engage and connect not only with each other, but with teachers. And so what we're looking to do is seek more ways for students to become empowered in their learning, to have better choice and voice in their learning, to create structures for that. And I think the term learning loss comes up an awful lot. And if you're listening to us tonight and you're thinking, what are you going to do about learning loss, Ann Arbor Public Schools? I think we need to think about learning loss a little bit differently, right? What happened this year during a pandemic was that learning trajectories were interrupted. But new trajectories come from those situations and oftentimes lead us into better places. And so we're looking for silver lining. We're looking to maximize and make learning more meaningful this year than it ever has been. I think we all recognize that face-to-face time and minutes are precious. So we have a new thought process around that time that we spend together. So you can expect that we will be more culturally responsive this fall, that the engagement that your students have in the face-to-face environment will be more meaningful. You can expect that the kinds of activities your students did offline and at home, out of the school building, will be more meaningful and connected to the learning that's happening in the school setting. You can imagine that tools and resources that we have used this year that students really have enjoyed will continue to be in use in ways that connect them to each other, such as Schoology, and ways to connect on assignments and to team and collaborate. So you will see more of that. And ultimately, we're looking for creativity, empowerment, and student choice in the coming years. So we're excited about where this situation will take us. And as always, we're good at making lemonade, and our students have learned an awful lot. So I want to honor the learning, and I also want to honor where the learning happened this year. I think we've recognized in greater ways that parents and families and community members are educators. And so we just want to keep that connection going in ways that make good sense for us this fall.
Thank you. One question I get, Ms. Linden, is, are we going to repeat, some of the prior year? Are we going to, we normally do kind of do a leveling up, as students come into a particular course or particular grade. But would you kind of speak to that? I know that last fall, in the fall of 20, we did reorganize curricula to account for those weeks in the spring of 20. But how are you and the instructional team and our teachers, how are you all talking about that idea of, just in centering on those standards or those things that we want to make sure kids haven't missed?
It is a great question. And some of the, redesign in the scope and sequence that we connected on, not just in the spring of 2020, but throughout this past school year, have been about focusing on those foundational standards and concepts that students really must have nailed down in order to progress, to the next grade level. So I'm proud of the work of the teaching and learning team and all of the Ann Arbor Public Schools teachers who collaborated and connected on that work. I mentioned it's likely a 3-year process of us continually looking to see where our students are, what they need. Our interventions and our supports are going to have to be pristine and really targeted.
Yeah.
We're talking about a lot of skills-based groups so that we can make sure students have those concepts solidly in place over the coming year. So you can expect as families in our district, more small group opportunities at elementary where students are connecting in small teams and skills-based teams. You can also expect us to continue to maximize tools that we utilize this year, like Lexia and Dreambox, and places where students connect and do some work independently as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. My pleasure.
I think we're good, Mr. Cluley. It looks like you have questions coming in,
Yep,
so that's good.
We have some questions already coming in. I'll go ahead and start with this first one. Doctors expect COVID cases to spike in fall and winter. At what level of community spread will you pause in-person school and pivot to virtual?
I really appreciate that question. And we know the first step to help us, not only in our schools, but across our community and our country, is really that vaccination process. And of course, our students under age 12 won't necessarily have that opportunity this summer, but I'll tell you, I'm delighted and encouraged by the vaccination rates that we're seeing in Washtenaw County. Unfortunately, we're not seeing those everywhere, but we will continue. In Washtenaw County Health Department has been great working with us because we are on a mission to get as many of our students and staff and parents and community vaccinated as possible. That is the best line of defense we have right now. That being said, I appreciate your question because there could be another wave in the fall. We will be working with Washtenaw County Health Department, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, all of those public health experts to really look at what levels we should be thinking about for fall, but really knowing that if we have high levels of vaccination, that should be our best line of defense. So once we are updated as we move toward that latter half of the summer and prepare for fall in a public health way, we will share all of that with our community so that there are no, that everything's kind of out there. Of course, all of us are hoping that we don't see the concern in our schools as a result of widespread vaccination.
Okay, and sort of a follow on to that, if it does reach a point where the case levels are so high that something has to happen, will you still allow families to attend full-time 5 days per week, or will you switch to all virtual or something else?
It's really impossible to predict the future, but our intention is to be fully open. And we have established our health and mitigation practices this spring. I don't want to jinx anything, but we've had low numbers of cases occurring in our schools. So we have a strong track record this spring on a full reopening. Of course, we're on hybrid at this time, but I feel optimistic that we will continue to offer in-school learning. It is not our intention to have to back up from that. So I want to be clear, that is our decision. Our schools are open.
Next question. Not all of the middle school kids will be vaccine eligible. How will band work and choir in particular? These are typically large classes of students, sometimes even 30 to 50 packed into one room.
I really appreciate that question for two areas. One is we are hearing from parents of sixth grade students, particularly depending on when their birthday falls and when they're going to be able to get vaccinated. So Ms. Linden and I and the team have been discussing this, and we will continue to be in conversation, engagement with sixth grade, that if there needed to be more virtual opportunity there for those families who are waiting till semester, perhaps, so that they can be vaccinated. So that's one area. The second area is what you say, those middle school specials and lunch. So we are working through a number of strategies. We'll be busy over this summer to make sure that we can keep our students into a safe and healthy and appropriate way of receiving their instruction. We'll be sharing more about that as we move through the summer, particular focus on those students at under the age of 12, because we know that will be a challenge as we return to school.
So that's dealing with the middle school. The next question was about elementary school. How will social distancing work at elementary schools with full enrollments 5 days per week and unvaxxed children, and also the middle schools, which we already have addressed. So we'll focus on the elementaries now.
Well, that's why Ms. Linden and her team have put out this InfoSnap enrollment right now, because we want to plan and prepare meticulously based on those numbers that you're giving us. We do understand from our parents in the community and our students that there will be a percentage of students and parents who will remain on a virtual status, either one program or the other, until they're fully vaccinated. So we believe that that will bring our numbers down just a bit of in-school students in our classrooms. We will be meticulously diagramming, enrolling, hiring teachers, staffing, making sure that those classrooms are in a situation where they will be healthy and safe. I'm sure everyone's aware that we've received the official notification of that 6 feet moving to 3 feet. So that does give us a little more ability to work in the in-school environment. We will continue to work on this and update you as we go.
Our next one, I heard that there will be access to AAPS apps like Sora, Lexia, and Dreambox over the summer. If we're returning our devices before summer, how will we access these resources?
I love that question because we want our students reading all summer. And yet the person that has to help us figure that out is Ms. Linden, in terms of, can they access from a home device, or how might they go about that, Ms. Linden?
It's such a great question. And I will tell you, we have a stellar IT team led by Dr. Heather Kallstrom. And I don't have specifics to share with you tonight, but I can tell you our teams are working on access. As you know, we've got some really robust summer programming going on. We expect thousands of students to be engaged in that. So students hanging around for summer instruction will keep their devices, and we're looking for public apps and access to all of the great tools that we've used this year, like Sora, Lexia, Dreambox. And so that's something the team is busy working hard on. I just need our community to know that returning the devices is because we have to prepare well for fall, and we want to make sure those devices are all working and they're repaired. We haven't seen them for some time, and they've been issued out there since March of 2020. And so this is an important time in the summer where all of that work does happen, in preparation for fall. And so we don't want to leave our community in the lurch, and we know those public access points are really important. So stay tuned, and we'll be sharing more information about it soon.
So I've made a note, Ms. Linden, that's something we'll update folks on, but I do want to, you probably remember better than I do, but when we purchased those licenses, I remember that we purchased them 12 months because we wanted our students to have full year access. So now it's just about the logistics of how you bring that into fruition. So stay tuned. We've got that on our priority list.
Okay, thank you. The next one, if there's no on-site aftercare, will you provide busing to other sites offering childcare, for example, Wide World of Sports?
I appreciate we've had this question, and I have move that to our transportation department to help us with. We want to work with our parents and families. So let's continue to have that question on the table. And those of you who have a particular, I appreciate you sharing a particular location. If you will get that into the survey that's coming to you, will give you a place where we want you to tell us the things that you want us to work on. And I'll tell you, we do have that. We have made arrangements in the past for shared custody arrangements and other situations on a case-by-case basis when students needed to get to a different spot on certain days. So I don't want to say an absolute yes, but I do want to say that is a priority. So I've made a note, and let's keep that on the burner.
Okay, our next one is, when do we have to decide between in-person and virtual?
Well, I understand that all of us are really interested to see how this summer is going to go. And the governor made an announcement this morning. I've been in meetings, but have received some texts about the content of that. It seems like every time we turn around, there's more changes, and we're reopening as a community. So we're all anxious to see how this summer goes. And I understand that parents may be wanting to wait a little bit longer before they make their decision. I completely understand that. What would help us is if you would like to ensure your seat and give us the opportunity to plan and prepare to go in on that registration and give us your best guess, your best intention at this time. That will help us to go ahead and staff and plan and prepare. We have always in the Ann Arbor Public Schools worked with students and parents and families who need a change. So we will work with you if that should change a little bit later, but it will be so helpful to us to go ahead and get at least a general idea at each grade level of how our parents and students are choosing.
Okay. Next one, how will mask off activities like lunchtime be socially distanced before children can be vaccinated?
That is the trick, and we will be monitoring throughout this summer for the updated CDC COVID guidance, particularly among those students who are under 12 years old. And we will continue to update. What we have known up to this point is that those meal times and other unmasked times, that distancing becomes the priority. So we'll see if that adjusts or changes over the summer, the guidance that we're given for in-school learning. And as we understand that, we will adjust. Our practices will be in line with the CDC guidance, and we're preparing a number of scenarios to make sure that our schools can operate according to that CDC guidance.
Okay. Next, with the 12 to 15-year-olds vaccine eligible now, will you reinstate middle school sports come fall?
Yes, middle school sports fully operational. We already have Rec and Ed at all age groups fully operational. 150 some soccer teams already out working, as well as another 60 some teams of field hockey. We will be up and running with our middle school sports, athletics, and also their enrichment opportunities as well.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions right along the same vein. So I'll ask this one and we'll check off a couple. Are you going to require ages 12 and up to be vaccinated, such as they're required for MMR and those type of vaccines?
That decision is a public health decision. So we've been in discussions with Washtenaw County Health Department and we'll continue those discussions. They actually at the state level set those requirements, and we implement them according to the public health requirements. So we will stay tuned as to when or if the vaccinations will be required. This will be an interesting process, and we don't quite know those answers yet.
And Dr. Swift, I'll add, I don't know, you've probably not seen this yet, but I saw a news story today that there's actually legislation in Lansing that's been introduced that would prohibit the requirement of having the vaccine. So
wow.
That obviously that has just been introduced. We don't know what the outcome of that will be, but.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Next question. If the vaccine is eligible for 2 to 11-year-olds by, say, October or November, might that increase the chance of having school-age childcare by second semester?
It absolutely would help us a great deal. What will remain to be seen, and you all, I'm sure, saw it as I did, recent New York Times story describing a greater level of hesitancy among parents for a younger age group of students. We hope that smooths out as people see more of our 12 to 15-year-olds being vaccinated. But we will continue to work on that school-age childcare arrangement. And it surely would help us if we could get into vaccinations available for our under 12-year-old students.
Okay. The next question, is there any possibility to provide the online synchronous school from the local neighborhood elementary schools? I really do want to get back to normal, but I feel it's still risky for children younger than 12 due to the absence of vaccine. I understand not all parents, but some parents will feel the same. I hear the online school will be provided in district-wide, and I don't think that will be helpful to children who just started to learn to engage as a member of the certain school, even though it was virtual this year. So basically, is it possible to do the online synchronous tied to your neighborhood school?
At this time, it looks like it would be a district arrangement, but certainly as Ms. Linden and I watch that registration come through on InfoSnap, if there are schools where there's a full section, and I'm speaking to elementary, of course, if there are schools where there's a full section, we certainly could look at grouping those students together. I don't think we would be opposed to that at all. But it will, all of that will that arrangement will depend on how that enrollment comes through. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go. And I do hear what you're saying about having that student connected, if at all possible, to the neighborhood school. Thanks.
Okay, next question. Do you think there is enough private care capacity to cover the elementary school aftercare pickup? If there's a crisis of coverage, is there a school plan for children who aren't attended?
So we have always monitored student pickup to ensure that that's always a structure that's been in place. And as a principal, I sat after hours with students, and I know Ms. Linden has. So we absolutely are going to be monitoring and always have. Ms. Linden, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the question is about the community capacity to support the child care that may be needed. So, obviously you've answered some of these questions, Dr. Swift, about how we are working hard and always trying to support communities. There's no really great answer tonight to that question, other than to say we're paying close attention and we're working through our next steps on it. Mm-hmm. But we definitely appreciate it and understand it.
And yet we won't ever leave a campus with the child there. And that is an absolute solid foundation that we've always had, and to make sure that every student is appropriately picked up and cared for after school.
Okay, our next one is students that are in sixth grade and above and want to do virtual. The only thing that's being offered is A2 virtual, where most kids do their own. when they're working. What about children with IEPs?
So I'm not sure if the question is about, is there a synchronous opportunity or live real-time opportunities to add on to A2V? And I know, Ms. Linden, that you, Ms. Coker, and I believe she's on this call actually, is working on the synchronous add-ons that possibly could occur. And then certainly every child on a 504 or an IEP, we are meeting those service needs in a virtual environment or however it is that those need to be met. So Ms. Linden, I know you oversee our special education team. So share with us a little bit about those students who on an IEP or on a 504 who may be choosing virtual. I know you're looking at lots of supports in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that in the 6 through 12 A2 virtual program, it is an asynchronous self-paced program. And so oftentimes students who need a lot of adult support don't choose that program by nature. But we do have students who receive IEP supports and services who attend through A2 virtual, and those services are provided through the homeschool. And we've been doing that for years. So I just want to reassure if families do choose that, we'll be supporting with services.
And Ms. Linden, if they've chosen virtual because they don't wish to be face-to-face, say until they're vaccinated or whatever, it is possible that those services could be provided in a virtual delivery as well, correct?
Yes, absolutely. That has been our experience this past year. Could not be face-to-face. So we have a lot of experience with that.
So choosing virtual does not mean that they wouldn't get their services.
Correct.
Next question. As you have not finalized the bell schedule, is there any possibility that the high school or middle school students would get home after the elementary school students? Some of us are relying on older siblings to watch younger ones given no elementary aftercare.
That is our priority, is to have our secondary students dismissed before our elementary students. We know that families and neighbors and community connections, we rely on those older students. So we absolutely are committed that our secondary, our older students will be dismissed ahead of our elementary students.
Okay. Next question. My neighbor wants to work in the fall aftercare program. Where can she apply?
We actually are working on one component that needs to be completed. And in the next few days, you'll see those application opportunities popping up on the A2 Schools website. We're also working with a number of folks who have worked for us in the past to determine their level of interest for returning to this work. So just keep an eye out. We will feature it in our weekly update when that posting is back up again. We're just clarifying a couple of details, kind of COVID-related details that need to be settled so that then we can get that posting back up.
Will students still have access to online programs such as Schoology, Cami, Lexia, etc. during the summer if they are not enrolled in the summer program?
Go ahead, Ms. Linden.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is similar to a question we answered a bit earlier, which is how do we access through Schoology the apps that are mentioned here when we're turning in our devices so that they can be cleaned and repaired in preparation for fall? And so I'll say to our community, our commitment is to make sure you have access to your tools over the summer. As Dr. Swift mentioned, it's part of our approval process for all of those tools. We have year-round licensing for those. So stay tuned, and we will have supports for you in terms of instruction and how to access those important tools. And we just want to reiterate that summer school enrollment is still going on. And so if you would like to check out the summer options, they're actually really fun. And so if you're worried about your students needing a break, I want to let you know they're learning, but they're doing it in a really fun way. So we'd encourage you to also visit a2schools.org/summer and see if there's something there that is of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. When will we get the InfoSnap registration?
We're Miss Linden's team is just tightening up one or two little details, and we're thinking just in the coming days. Correct, Miss Linden?
That is correct. I think we're preparing our message to go in our Friday update tomorrow. I know we've got about 40 people here with us tonight who can hear that here, and the rest of our community will hear more about it tomorrow. And it should be available at the start of the week. So we do encourage folks to get in, and as soon as you are able and ready to declare your choice for the fall.
That's great. Thank you. It's always nice to get that done before the last day of school. So then your enrollment is all in and it's good to go.
Based on the fact that middle school sports are being reinstated, will late busing be an option again?
We plan to continue the activity buses later in the afternoon. We'll be looking at, what the schedule is as we do every year, but I don't expect any adjustments on that.
Okay, next question. For students who are vaccinated, if there's a COVID close contact, will they have to quarantine at home?
We understand from Washtenaw County Health Department that once they reach the full vaccination status, they're not going to be required to quarantine. And that is the guidance we've been receiving. Now, when we answer these questions, we always say that could change, of course, but at this time, and they've said this for our staff as well, if that full vaccination status has been achieved, then there's not a requirement to quarantine.
I might just add asymptomatic also. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Which is really a great development. And I hope that it stays that way or even gets better. Yeah.
Okay. Will elementary students be able to switch from virtual to in-person, assuming that they get vaccinated at some point in the fall?
We absolutely want to work with families so that transition can occur. We will likely do that at the quarter or at the semester so that we're transitioning our groups of students together from the virtual to the in-school environment. So we absolutely are delighted for students to get fully vaccinated and then to rejoin the in-school learning option. And we'll just construct those little bridges across at certain points during the fall and winter so that students know when they and others will be able to join in-school learning.
Okay. At the high school level, or really it sounds like any level where you're eligible to get the vaccine, might there be a voluntary information portal where you could input your student's vaccination status so that AAPS and the community could get some sense of who is vaccinated? We
would really love to do that. And we understand that if doing so, it would probably need to be, as you noted, voluntary and perhaps need to be anonymous, but we would very much like to be able to get a pulse on our level of vaccination. Right now, our best indicator is that county information. I check it every day to see how much progress we're making on vaccination. We would love to have that more at a district level. So stay tuned. That is on our list. And to see how we can go about doing that. We see it occurring in other organizations. So we're hoping that we'll be able to also.
Okay, the next one is a planning question. With the school's start date, August 30th, can we assume in-person orientations for new students, kindergartners, sixth graders, and ninth graders will occur the week prior, trying to plan summer vacations, but not miss any important orientation events?
I absolutely will ask our principals groups and Ms. Parks, assistant superintendent over our school leadership team. I will ask them to go ahead and give us some ideas of how that's going to work starting on August 30th, whether those popsicles in the park and those kinds of activities activities will come that week prior or whether they'll come, right around that first day. We will share that information so that families can go ahead and plan those end of summer trips and those activities that you're engaged in. So I'm making a note to be sure that we give an indication and an idea. I also, team was shared this morning with PTO exec board, that idea of, it's not just our 5th graders and our 8th graders moving up, but also our students from last year who would like a tour of the school and, to get accustomed and acclimated. So we'll be in touch on those kind of activities that come at the start of the school year.
Okay. Our next question. Are you aware of other Michigan schools similar to the size of AAPS who have also canceled before and after care?
We actually did a full analysis of several districts very similar to us, large districts. All of the districts that we studied are experiencing the same challenges that we are. I'm not sure that they've all shared their exact plans for fall, but I do remain in touch with those district teams, as does Ms. Linden and members of our leadership team, so that we are calibrating and sharing the best ideas, best practices. Our program is larger than all other programs except one among the districts similar districts that we've compared. So we will continue to calibrate with other districts and see the best ideas. And I think that a lot of folks have not, they've either announced with very limited program or they've not yet announced yet.
When we register for InfoSnap, will the choice be the final decision, or will there be another choice before the school year starts? And I think that's specifically the choice of which mode.
Mm-hmm. So that InfoSnap is the fall registration. So we would ask that you just give your best indication and go ahead and get your child registered for school so that we can prepare. When and if that decision should change over the summer or in the weeks approaching the beginning of the year, at that point, we would ask that our parents work with their school principal because the InfoSnap tool doesn't work very well for you to just go back in and click it a different way. That kind of has to be done behind the scenes. So once you've completed registration, then those adjustments will be made through the school principal. Ms. Linden, is there anything we should add to that?
You responded perfectly. That's exactly right.
And I guess the only thing I'll add is that parents shouldn't be expecting at some point over the summer getting another email saying, hey, we need you to make another decision.
Right.
If you're confident with what you answer in the coming weeks, then you're all good to go for the fall.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Our next question, will breakfast still be offered at the elementary schools despite likely no before care?
I really appreciate that someone brought this up. We have received federal approval to continue the full distribution of food through June 22. So not only will breakfast and lunch be served, we will continue on that status of emergency food distribution. And it's a great day that whether paperwork is filled out or not, every student will have the opportunity and have the option of free breakfast and free lunch. I'm so grateful to the federal programming. Last summer, we were hanging, waiting for the decision, and it was stressful for everyone involved. But this year, they've approved in advance through June of 2022. And what I'm delighted about is even with our students in school now, I'm hearing that they, sometimes you worry that maybe they won't pick up the meal, but I'm hearing that they are taking advantage of those meals in our in-school learning environment. So very delighted about that.
Is there any plan to transition breakfast to breakfast rather than dessert called breakfast? So I guess a question about what we're serving as breakfast.
Yeah. So we are following those federal school lunch guidelines, but I will share that back with our Chartwell's team, because I know that there remain some concerns. I do understand what you're asking. There remain some concerns around breakfast. Thank you.
Well, I think our hour is up and we don't have any other questions right now. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Swift, if you want to wrap it up.
We just really appreciate you all taking the time to join us this evening. Our parents and our students, our staff, and our community have been through a long and very hard journey. And we know that this last chapter continues to have challenges. And I just appreciate the partnership and the outreach and the input from our parents. We do read your emails. We do hear you, and we're doing everything we can on this team to continue to problem solve, to build bridges, and to move ahead. It is an exciting time to look ahead, and yet we're clear-eyed that we're not out of COVID yet. We're getting to a much more positive place. We're not out of it yet, and yet we will continue to work together through these coming days of summer and into this 21-22 school year. So thank you so much, and reach out to us anytime. We will be back again next Thursday, and then we'll take a week to do graduations. The class of 2021 will graduate that first week of June, and we'll come back in and do a few more community meetings before the end of June, and make sure that our parents and our students and our families have the information that we can share and have what they need to know in order to plan for a great back to school in the fall. Thank you.